Hello, everybody. I am right now jumping on. We are going through with our very first Binge Bitch session for a scripted series, and we are going to go with the big dogs. We're going with Star Wars. We're going to go episode 4, 5, and 6. I'm going to bring on some of my friends right now and introduce them as we bring them through. So I'm going to first bring on my friend Tom Welch. He's coming out to us from Los Angeles right now. And Tom, you can find him on Instagram at Welchie's Gripe, and I will put these up later. But Tom is a writer, and I'm gonna keep on bringing people through. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring on Annie. So this is Anne's setting. Annie is actually with a podcast, Never Growing Up. You guys can find it wherever you listen to podcasts right now. She's a good friend of mine from college, and she's coming to us from the Midwest. Now I'm bringing in Lily. Lily is a good friend of mine. Yes, we have her here. I got her in a moment. So Lily Holiday, she's one of our friends here in San Diego. She's a burlesque performer. She's part of the nightlife industry, and she does a lot of costuming and cosplay for me, actually, in my professional life. And then last but not least is my good friend Brian Hill, who is from 619 Bearcast. You can also find him at PEX during a normal weekend. And right now, it's just nice to see all you guys' faces and that we have like a moment to connect. And I get to talk about something other than the craziness in the world. So that being said, I'm gonna keep this rolling right now. So first off, we're gonna talk Star Wars today. I watched this movie for my very first time as an adult, on March 18th, and then I subsequently just kind of plowed through all of them. So I did 4, 5, 6. I went 1, 2, 3. Then I did 7, 8, 9. I watched a Solo in there. I did a Rogue One last night, and I Mandalorian all of it. So yeah, I have Star Wars. So escapism at its finest. So that being said, yeah, I remember some of the toys and that kind of thing when I was a kid. I had some of the off characters and that kind of thing, but Star Wars wasn't something that I just resonated with me so much. My mom kind of pushed us in the musical direction, and so I've now rediscovered it as an adult. So I want to talk about it. These things are like pop culture. We can go off topic, go crazy. This is just going to be a fun moment. So first, I just want to know about you guys. Who's actually saw these in the theaters? Did anybody actually see these in the theaters as a kid or anything? So Brian, so let's go there with
older ones.
I guess I'm the old one.
So I'm saying, let's say 4, 5, 6, like these guys. I do remember there was a re-release in the 80s, so I do remember seeing Return of the Jedi, and it scared the shit out of me, so I think it turned me off, so I don't remember it. I think I was traumatized enough. So it was like brand new eyes on it when I watched it recently. So Brian, what was your experience with it?
Well, I think, if I remember correctly, I didn't see Star Wars when it was originally released. I saw it when they re-released it right before Empire. So I was probably about 7. And the thing I remember the most, honestly, about seeing it the first time in the theater was when Darth Vader first boards the ship. There's that last rebel standoff. There was a really hot rebel dad who had salt and pepper hair and blue eyes. And I was like, I don't know why, but I like that guy.
This is my moment. Do you still notice him now when you watch?
I'm sorry?
Do you still notice him now when you watch?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Because it's one of those things I literally can remember sitting in the theater and being drawn to that guy for whatever reason. And of course, being just completely obsessed with the movie from that point on. And the joy of knowing, when we were leaving, that's the other thing that I was triggered with that day was that a woman we were with, the young girl, completely spoiled Empire for us because Empire was about to come out. Mm-hmm. And she was like, oh, well, the whole thing about, Darth Vader is Luke's father. And so ever since then, I am triggered by any spoiler because that's the ultimate spoiler, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's funny because you said, you got to see it with fresh eyes and that perspective of and it opened you up to this whole new world. And then me seeing it as an adult, and there's so many reference points, and it's oh, that's this happens here. that person dies in the first movie, there was a lot of that kind of shit that I was like, I had no idea. So
it's an indoctrination, you know. I mean, you're seeing at a very young age. I mean, look at, I actually have this, and I was going to show it early on. So this is the Star Wars sleeping bag I've had since I was like 4 or 5 years old.
That's amazing.
I love it.
It's crazy. I mean, it was my life for a big chunk of it.
I love it. So, going with everybody else. So, Annie, when did you first start up with your Star Wars love of?
Well, I started watching it. One of my cousins, who's he's like 10 years older than I am, and he had all of the gear. So anytime we went to go visit at my family in Pittsburgh, we would watch the Star Wars movies, and so I got really into it then. And then it kind of died off a bit, and then it started picking back up when the prequels came out, and then I just started to accept my nerddom and was full on into it. Since they re-released and re-imaged everything, and they replaced Darth Vader at the end of the Return of the Jedi with Hayden Christensen. But
don't get me started.
I started Googling originals because I'm like, okay, what did this really look like? For a moment there. We lost Lily for a second, so she'll probably pop back in. So, Tom, I'm going to drop it over to you. So, when is your first time that Star Wars resonated? When did it really hit?
I think I was about that age, I was just getting born, before, just after Star Wars came out, the first one. And so, yeah, I think it was all more subconsciously and subtly, pushed into my system at that age. And I started to just kind of get used to having it on, and it started giving me the imagination. I'm sure it boosted my imagination of think big, think expensive, think, outer space. And yeah, it was all pretty subtle, I guess. And then eventually, kind of like you were saying, the prequels came out, and then I was kind of like, oh, well, now it's when I'm invested, because I forget about the originals. Now I want to get into these on opening night kind of thing.
So now, Lily, what about you? What was your first resignation? When did Star Wars really indoctrinate you? Oh, we're frozen.
No.
Okay. I'm going to have her come right back in. So I'm going to keep it going through. So, okay.
I'm curious about you.
Yeah, for me.
What took you so long?
I think I just resisted.
She was busy.
It just seemed like something that was so foreign, and I'm going to pop her in and see if this just kind of brings through. So I think one of the things that I just kind of, it felt a little bit nerd culture. I do remember little things here and there. I used to babysit these 3 boys when I was in high school, and that was when the prequels were all starting to roll out, and the video game thing was really hot. I want to say on the Nintendo had all of that going on, and so I kind of got introduced there, but it was I don't want to watch this. Nothing really appealed to me, and nothing ever hooked. And so, and the first movie in particular seems just a little bit, it's a little slower, the first movie. And so I never actually went right into it. And then now that I watch it, I'm like, oh, it sets up so much good stuff though, And so,
it's
but yeah,
unstable internet.
There she is. This is our first time trying a binge bitches with more than 2 people. So this will sometimes happen. But I have faith that Lily's it'll reconnect in here.
Dangilo, did you ever feel on the outside, since you had never seen them, was it when everybody was talking about Game of Thrones and you're the one person who isn't watching Game of Thrones? Did you ever just feel it's people are speaking Latin around me or something?
Or just movie references also. I'm sure there's some pop culture that relates to Star Wars, and you're
because you get it so much that you kind of understand, okay, well, spoiler, everybody watch the fucking movies. We're going to do spoiler and everything right now. But so Luke and Leia are brother and sister. And you've heard about the fact that they kiss in one movie and then they find out they're brother and sister in the next. And this is in his father is Anakin, who is also Vader. So there's touchstones like that you cannot escape in culture right now. Mm-hmm. That, so I think I just was able to get by. And then plus I'm also a child of the Us magazines, the People magazines. So I would be seeing that, okay, well, you know, Keira Knightley and Natalie Portman are doing this movie. So it was like, that was this. So I can tell you more about like what they wore, but I can't tell you about what the movie was about. So it was a little bit of that. So and it's funny too, because I am a science fiction like person. Like I love it. I watch a lot of it. And I don't know, the Final Frontier just didn't get me for a little while. So
do you feel like sometimes when something is so widely embraced by culture that you almost want to like stubbornly like stay away from it? Like I've never seen Babe Pig in the City because I was just like, hey, you know what? I don't need that. Like, I'm okay.
You're that is.
I'm that guy.
I think there is a little bit of that sometimes, and sometimes you just kind of like, it's so much around you. Because I did have, like, I grew up with a lot of cousins and everything, and so they were really into it. Other dudes were into it. So, and then, you know, maybe it was a little bit, and we can go into this deep, dark situation. Here's my Oprah moment. So we didn't have a ton of money. So it wasn't like I was going to go out there and start collecting all these characters. You know what I mean? And the ones that I think I did have are like the beeline characters. The guy who greets them at the door at Jabba the Hutt, you know, with the big things on his head. I had that character. You know what I mean? Like I did not have a Luke. You know, that wasn't in my house.
Too mainstream. Luke was too.
Well, it's not like Luke cost more money though.
But you just could find it.
Oh, I got you. Yeah.
It was that kind of situation. So, and my parents, it was like we went and got a toy on like every other Friday. It was payday. We do this. We go out to eat. We see a movie. That was it. And so
we were like a Wampa, you know, household, not an at household. You know, like that's what we had. Yeah.
I love that.
I don't understand that. Please explain that.
Well, a Wampa would have probably cost you about $4, and an AT-AT would have cost you like $60 or $70, like back in the day when you were buying that for your kids.
Okay. But that's the value now, though.
Those are like the alien things that they ride.
Yeah.
Right? Oh my god.
Yeah, in my head, that's how much they cost. I don't know how much they cost.
Yeah.
So these things, these movies are incredible. I'm hoping that Leah is going to be able to, or Lily's going to be able to jump back in here with us. So I'm going to keep it going, though. So let's talk a little bit about, and I really want her for this. So I'm hoping that she's going to, her internet pops back in. More about characters. Let's talk about the episode 4 through 6, our storyline nouns, our persons, our places, our things, that kind of a thing. And so I have like just some like random like things here. And so like this whole thing between like being a Jedi and a Sith, okay? Is that something? And I have seen the other movies. I saw the 1 through 3. But is it like royalty that you're like born into it, or can you work your way into it? I don't get it. I don't get that part.
You're born with both.
Okay.
Essentially, like it's the whole overall story is like you're born with both light and dark.
Okay.
It's like what are you going to lean into? And that's they don't really talk too much about that. In the original 4, 5, 6, but they dive more into that in the prequels, and they dive more into that into the extended culture, the extended canon, like wars and all of that.
Okay.
You do at some point have a choice because it's kind of similar to like Harry Potter, right? Where you have like the sorting hat, and you can make a choice at the end of the day. And so the same thing with Rey. I mean, I know this is ahead of us, but like they could choose.
But like, why? Okay, these are like weird questions. This is like fun. I actually get to ask because these are things that I think when I'm watching. So like we have like our 3 mains who are, you know, Han. So we have Han, we have Leia, and we have Luke. Why can't Han become a Jedi? Why is that one step too far from him? Like why doesn't that happen for him?
He just wasn't born with the mitochondria, which is what they say creates a Jedi.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you choose to recognize that that's part of, I hate even recognizing that it's something like biological. I'm way more like it's something, you know, spiritual.
Okay.
Because the biological thing is what they bring in like episode 1.
Yeah,
like
in the prequel, that's when they like examine you and they're like, you have 25% midichlorians. Congratulations, you're a Jedi. Yay.
Okay, but so you can like think.
I think I read somewhere when Lucas was making the first one that he originally wanted it to be something that like anybody could attain. And I don't think it became that in the final product of the film. But then again, you also see moments of Hans, as we'll call him, in the first episode where he's just very like poo-poo about it. He's just very like, I can't believe you believe in this old-fashioned voodoo, stuff, this old mumbo jumbo. And I think just going into anything with that attitude, Han, you're not going to be able to lift objects with your mind. Sorry.
So it is more of like it is okay. So for different terms of like the Harry Potter thing is like, you're born with a special ability, but then as a Muggle, you can always work your way into it. Maybe that's the situation.
I think as it went along, in the later films, it definitely looked like they were trying to say like, you didn't have to be born into it necessarily. Like the little kid in the broom, at the end of the 8th movie. Yeah. Made it seem like, there were other Jedis out there. You didn't have to be a member of that lineage.
Yeah, because I mean that's something that comes in like later, and so with the youngling situation and like all that, I kind of get that those are like the young Jedis in training, and so okay, so then going into that, so this whole Jedi situation. So let's talk about this. So then we have also. What is that turning point that actually, when Luke is talking to Yoda and Yoda is on his deathbed, spoiler, anyways, and so, which happens in movie 3, like, so he's only there for like moments, like he's like in like 10 minutes of each movie, and like such a fucking like touchstone pop culture and culturally that, everybody knows who this person is, and so he's like, Kermit, he's like one of those famous puppets. But basically Luke is like, so I'm a Jedi now, and he's like, no, but you will be. So like, you have to kill your dad to become a Jedi. Like, what is the situation?
Well, you have to go into the tree and have the fantasy fight and all that good stuff, right? The cave.
Right. That was always a weird thing, which I always wish they would have gotten into more. But I guess after thinking about it, they got into it again in The Force Awakens. The Last Jedi, they had a similar go into this cave on an island, and same thing will happen. But yeah, no, I think it was just part of the process of attaining, like a mental level to become a Jedi meant like facing your greatest enemy and conquering your fears. It was more like that. The Vader just happened to be the form of his fear.
Mm-hmm.
And Luke was always letting his emotions control him. And when your emotions are controlling you, then you are like on your way to the dark side. Like you've got to like chill out, be a little more zen.
Fear, anxiety, depression are the things of like
be in the moment.
Why do I know these things, you guys? It is now taking up space in my brain. It is crazy. Okay, so like talking our like little love triangle. Okay, I think Lily's in, so we're gonna bring her back.
Hi.
Hey.
Okay, so hopefully
Back like Palpatine.
It's gonna be a good time. So Lil, we're talking about like the whole Jedi situation and like what's the threshold that you have to hit to become an actual Jedi, and that's like facing your biggest
To be a
fear.
Jedi Knight, or to be like accepted into the Jedi like
Like the whole
clique?
my example here was the very, very early one with Luke becoming, am I a Jedi? I'm a Jedi now. And Yoda tells him on his deathbed, no, not yet. And so
Yeah.
and my situation there was, like, did you have to kill your dad? And they told me, no, we don't have to kill your dad to become a Jedi. You just have to face your biggest fear.
I think it's more of a training. It's not a biggest fear so much as a control over your own emotions, because the Jedi were super big on that. So I think it is more leaning towards face your biggest fear and be able to control it and not lash out in anger, because a lot of people lash out in anger when they're afraid of something. And that's kind of where the theme of that was supposed to go. It's not a very nuanced take of emotions, I feel. But I mean, it is a very like call to hero of adventure sort of thing. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, it's kind of what Brian said as well. So you guys are like, okay. So I'm on the track to like learning the Jedi ways. Okay. So cool. So let's talk about our main three, our love triangle in this situation, and how like they just skate over the fact that you kissed your sister, but it's like you didn't know it, so we're okay with it. And so I guess I'm okay with it too.
Kind of like a Danny Jon Snow situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit. It's like, well, they didn't know when they banged on the boat, so also it's like medieval times, so whatever.
Exactly. Thank you.
It's a galaxy far, far away.
It's a galaxy far, far away, so we don't really.
Everyone married their uncle back then. It's totally fine.
Right. It comes back in the future. It's a trend that comes back.
Okay, so asking like Annie and Lily on this side, like with the two guys, who is the guy that is the better guy? Like who were you guys looking at when you guys were a little girl? And I'll ask the boys this too, because we're all gay here, so it's gays and girls.
Oh yeah.
Han Solo.
I mean, yeah, it's Han.
Yeah.
It's Han. Is it
I
Han?
mean, or Leia. Later, if you read the books, Mara Jade is in fact that bitch. So
Who is this?
The book.
Mara Jade, who becomes Luke's wife, she tried to murder him when they first meet, and he's like, "I love this bitch." And
They never bring her up in any of these movies, do they? Like
no,
no.
because they threw up in the universe, and I'm very bitter about it. So.
Because this was like one of my things too, is like, so yeah, does Luke become like, because I don't know about this I don't know anything about extended, so I need to go into like the Clone Wars and all that, and everybody's raging about how that's over now. But like this whole situation there is you know, where does Luke go from here? Does he just become asexual, and is he like a monk? Is he like a Yoda? You know?
No, he actually has an incredible Batman Catwoman-esque relationship with somebody who's like consistently pushing him out of buildings and shit, and he eventually like makes her good. It's great. It's fucking great.
Do you know extended universe too, Annie?
Yeah, I do. And that's the weird thing about the Jedi, because it's in theory, it's very much like, you know, Catholicism, right? In theory, they're supposed to be celibate because, again, they're controlled by their emotions, and if they get emotionally attached to someone, then that could sway their power. And so it never really works. Like no one's ever really celibate at the end of the day.
Okay, so another spoiler here for people who haven't seen 7, 8, and 9. Okay, so this makes me feel better about the whole reason why Leia didn't become a full-blown Jedi, because she had emotions she didn't check.
Well, that was like Old Republic Jedis. Like when Luke started training other people, Luke didn't really adhere to that because that wasn't Luke's like sort of zhuzh. That like wasn't Luke's gig. He's just like, you become a better person by caring about other people. Like Luke's whole like ideology is that you have to take care of other people. Like he's very much so like nobody is lost, you know, which is kind of why, you know, the newer fucking things did him dirty. You know what I mean? Like they did him dirty as a character. And he like actually encouraged his students to go home and see their families. He encouraged, you know, things in the newer Republic or like the Old Republic were like frowned on. So like it's a very interesting take, like the Young Jedi series and stuff, which would have been really fucking cool to see. Which is like Han and Leia's like 3 kids. They have 3 kids. They don't have just like the one little emo boy running around. They have 3.
Well. See, these are like things.
Anyways, I'm not better.
The other thing, Dangilo, is that in the 9th movie, they have that scene of Leia and Luke training, you know, the one where they sort of like put her face on someone else's body and all of that. It's very short, but I had read an article that said that scene was actually much, much longer, and it showed her coming more into being like a Jedi herself. But then she saw the future and what would happen if she did continue as a Jedi, and that's why she pulled back and didn't go on and went into the life that she went into.
But she
apparently,
she still had her Jedi mind tricks, because if you
she went full Mary Poppins and flew through outer space. I mean, you know,
yeah.
And then when she sent Han to him on like over there to like, you know, have that one final moment, like. There was that kind of a thing. So it was just kind of like, ugh, they did it dirty. Why can't, like, because I was kind of like bitter. Why can't girls be Jedis? But this makes me feel better about it. So.
Oh, we can be. Oh, yeah. They're in the canon.
Well, Rey becomes one. So.
And prequels have female Jedis too.
Yeah, like a ton of them.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
I really like grit my teeth and was like, I'm gonna get through these movies. And the cameo, everybody's like, "Oh, you want to be in Star Wars?" Yes. So like big celebrities are like little things in these movies. It's crazy.
So another part about Leia not becoming a Jedi, one of the bigger plot points of her not becoming a Jedi was because she couldn't really control her emotions, like to a point that Luke could. Like she couldn't separate herself and she couldn't separate her anger because of a lot of her trauma. And the fact of the matter was that she was a better politician than she was a warrior. Like she was better at being like somebody who gets shit done, as opposed to like she's like, I can't sit on a fucking planet and meditate. I have to get things done in the Senate. I have to rebuild a republic. So like that was a huge plot point that they kind of just negated and kind of was like, oh well, she can't control her emotions, and you know what? She had a vision about her son. It's just like she wasn't busy. She wasn't busy becoming the president. Okay. All right. That's a man-child.
I love that though, because the thing is, I was a little bit bitter about that because I was like, Leia deserved it. And the thing is because I had we'll talk about this later because this is those other movies.
These are those other movies.
Yeah, these are those other movies that'll come like later. Yeah. We're talking about the good in these beginning ones because I have other questions about her. But I want to keep. Okay, so questions here about the creatures. Okay, so like we have the Ewoks and that sort of thing. And I haven't done all my research yet to look at what the old, like the scene when they first get into Jabba's lair and like that musical number that happens now in the Disney Plus version. Yeah, so that's what I see. So, and I feel like, and this is a thing too with the whole George Lucas aspect, but like, that he wrote over all of these puppets with this new technology. So
the interesting part about that is that George Lucas actually wanted to do a film preservation act through the government. Like, I don't know if anybody knows about this, is that George Lucas went to Congress and was just like, older films should be preserved. And then he went later on in his life and did like the reboot thing or like the extended editions and doesn't want to sell the original versions. So that was like kind of one of those very weird, like older in life people change sort of moments.
Well, then he changed again later in life because then he just said, here, it's yours. Give me that money.
I think he was tired.
I think so because it's just, I did watch that like special they have right now on Disney Plus about the Star Wars, the original trilogy. Have you watched that little behind? It's actually really interesting. And they have a lot of original footage and like interviews with the cast, and they have some of their screen tests and things like that. So it's actually, it is kind of fascinating to look at. So I would say that is something to watch because Disney needs more of our money. But it is a really, really cool thing, and it kind of
gives them out the money or else it gets the hose again.
Yeah. So I'm gonna since we're talking about George, let's talk about George. Okay. So let's talk about George Lucas, the merchandise, the Disney stuff. I want to talk about Disneyland a little bit because now I get the Disneyland rides because I've been on the Disneyland rides and now I appreciate them more. And so from afar and like in retrospect, so that's something that's fun there. So, but going into this whole George Lucas thing. So George Lucas, he made money. And I think it's fascinating the deal that he cut where he took less money from the movie basically and got all merchandising rights. So did you guys see
he got free editing too, right?
You got what?
Free editing.
Well,
his wife wasn't paid for the story she put together.
Jesus.
Well, yeah, because she was working on other things with like different big directors. So what is that story?
That's
so tell us a little bit about his wife and him, because you know some of this. Don't get too crazy, because we're still. So what is that situation? So she did a lot of the pre-edits on this, and did she?
She read the script, and George Lucas is a really good world builder, and he's not really a good storyteller. He basically lifted like his world building skills are amazing. His ability to kind of bring in people of different like backgrounds, like, oh, you're a good puppeteer, oh, you're a good designer, like that all like is amazing. Like you can see it in the fucking prequels, like they're just amazing and as far as like design work goes.
Yeah.
But the story is yikes. because his wife looked at the fucking original script and was just like, you can't just lift the Hidden Fortress script and make it about 2 fucking droids. Nobody wants to see these 2 fucking droids the whole movie. When you have Debbie Reynolds' daughter and hot Harrison Ford, they want to see those 2. Like, so she ended up making the script more about Luke and Leia and Han. She made it about the big 3, when originally it was supposed to be about the droids.
So it was a buddy comedy about droids.
It was originally supposed to be about R2 and C-3PO.
So
because that's the original Hidden Fortress script.
I see. Like, well, it's amazing though, because when did they break up? Was it after the series, or was it?
Yeah, it was much later.
Okay.
I think it was in the like late 80s, early 90s, like right after he like refused to make like sequels to the Star Wars films. He was just doing these weird Ewok films and Howard the Duck.
Uh-huh.
You can kind of see him spiral a little bit. And he's like making like sci-fi money, like sci-fi effects money.
Well, and that's something too that like I kind of was looking, because he hated the Hollywood machine and all that kind of a thing, and so it's kind of incredible. So he made $12 billion. They made off revenue off of just the toys, and it was genius for him to actually to have that thought. And you're saying that he's a great world builder, and that just kind of says that he's a visual person. And who knew that these toys were going to take off like this? And so he was just planning some posters.
They saved Lego. Like Lego, the company was going under until they got the IP for Star Wars. So we have Legos today thanks to Star Wars.
So he's really he's done a lot for us. I know that. So Disney paid him $4 billion to purchase the franchise outright. So he doesn't see any more money off of the original series or anything like that anymore. So with that, going into the whole Disneyland and everything else, how do you guys feel about the Disneyland world? Is it like something that you guys enjoy, or is it something that's like, what happened here?
I just avoid Disneyland at all costs, no matter what. It's the last place on earth I want to be. So I don't care what they put there. I'm not going.
But it's not for me.
Yeah. I love amusement parks. I completely disagree with you about not wanting to go to Disneyland. I love Disneyland, but what they put in that park doesn't make any sense with the lore of Star Wars, except for the Millennium. They're like, plopped the Millennium Falcon, and then they're just like, random space destination. Here, build a lightsaber out of junk. I'm like, you don't understand lightsabers. Why don't you're paid?
Maybe as like a more of a middle of the road perspective.
Yeah.
I like Disney and I like Star Wars, and I thought the land it's well put together. It's completely immersive. The whole making money off making droids and lightsabers is a little but people running around with those lightsabers sure are smiling. The Millennium Falcon ride, it's really well themed. I mean, there's nothing like walking into the Millennium Falcon and sitting down at the chessboard and all of that, and like taking your seat at the controls and pulling the lever back and going into light speed. I mean, that's really something. It doesn't necessarily hold up to repeated sittings, because it's honestly not that interesting. But it was neat. I haven't been on the Force, the other one, I don't know what it's called, but everything I've heard is that it's incredible.
See, I've heard that too. And the thing is I did get to ride that most recent one, and that was cool, because everybody gets like an opportunity to kind of play, like just 2 people who are guiding and 2 people who are shooting and that sort of a thing. And so
the other Disney immersive rides, do you get bored of those? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's Disney, so the music, like the John Williams score in particular, hits you so hard that it's an emotional like response that like, I'm here, I'm gonna walk like this, I'm gonna like, it's like there is that thing, because when you do watch these movies, there's a pomp and circumstance to all of it. And so
I think another part of it is that a lot of these things we're part of the market but we're not necessarily the target market. So, you take a 10-year-old and they're going to think it's the coolest thing they ever saw and the coolest thing they ever went on,
you take a 10-year-old to the street fair and they're going to think it's the coolest thing they ever
Well, that's what that's a good point. But I'm just saying, that's why, like, when I saw Star Wars and it lost Best Picture to Chariots of Fire, I was like, shenanigans. That's insane. How can that happen? you know. But now you go back and you're like, well, yeah, duh.
It was,
you know,
it was a kid's movie. They keep saying that.
That's why a lot of people see Galaxy's Edge on both ends. Some people do see it as a failure because they did not see the crowds that they were going to have. And that's kind of true. A lot of it's because of the way they did crowd control with the lines and the way they
got fired. They did something wrong.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I love Galaxy's Edge. I think it's amazing to see the Millennium Falcon. I do think that the lands they created are basically a mixture of what you see in Rogue One and what you see of Force Awakens.
Yeah,
it's like Jakku and this kind of mix. So that's what's kind of a bummer to me, is because it's
that was kind of relying on the nostalgia of the first Star Wars. You know what I mean? Like,
they're going after kids of today. I mean, these are kids' movies. The merchandise, I mean, alone is like I mean, they make money.
So silly because they didn't do anything new with the original ones. Like, why would you do the same thing that's been done the same times? Like, make new toys. We all want to buy new toys. I love new toys.
I mean, the fascination with these films, what people love, has also inevitably been what they gripe about. I mean, because they speak to different generations and because they pull in different age groups of audiences, you get the people who want to take it very seriously, and then you get the people who love Jar Jar Binks because they're young enough and that clicks with them, or they love the Ewoks, and then the adults who are trying to take it seriously hate it, and you just get this like ongoing, and it sounds like it's the same with the Disneyland.
I love the Ewoks because they're ridiculous.
They don't ever say Ewok though, do they? We just know that they are Ewoks. Do they ever say Ewoks?
No, I think they do. C-3PO does.
But there's a lot of things we don't know their names until the action figure comes out and it says it on the box, you know.
You're like, oh, that's what this is.
Right,
yeah. That's that little squirrely thing next to Jabba was named Salacious Crumb. Like, who the fuck knew that?
Yeah.
Does he eat
right before she choked Jabba the Hutt out?
That was the guy with the weird laugh.
Yeah.
Okay,
little shit.
The stereotypical, like, basically it's the rat from the Muppets, but they just gave him a little bit of a different face. Right. Like, and so, which is cute.
Over him.
And you can buy him at Disneyland now too, and he sits on your shoulder, I think. It's one of the toys they sell.
Make it like from the Eagle.
How about the fact that, like, now I get the whole Yoda backpack? I get it.
Do you get the Princess Leia cosplay outfit now that you probably were like, why is everyone dressed like a slutty space princess?
Oh, I've always gotten that. Because they reference that so to hell. I mean, that
right,
was the whole Friends episode based on, guys, that was their big fantasy for the longest time. It's just funny that, well, speaking of, like, so George, he gets this merchandise deal, and then there's like so many costume changes by the third movie. Like, when you're watching, I'm like, Leia has a look for every damn scene, and I'm here for it. And so that's my little gay likeness coming out. But like, when she first meets the Ewoks, she's in like a shawl. Then she's like in a poncho. Now she's like in the little top with the little vest thing, and it's like,
it's belted. It's off the shoulder. Oh no, wait, her hair's down. Her hair's up. She's in a helmet. We don't know what she's gonna do next.
How did they pack in space?
Well,
how did these outfits up there?
There's many segues that can lead you to the next movie you should watch, and this movie addresses some of those jokes. Is Spaceballs.
There you go.
Oh my God! It just never made any sense to me. Again, like, and that's something too. The culturally, I know the Rick Moranis in a big helmet, that kind of a thing. He's coming back to. You guys know that Disney got him back out of retirement, so his kids are.
Shrunk the Kids or something.
He's doing a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. They're bringing back the series, and so
that's fun.
Okay.
So now, Dangilo, since you're watching like the core canon there, did you watch the Star Wars Christmas special?
Please God do. Please God do.
I've heard about it. It's on YouTube.
Oh,
and
good.
So, and I guess I'm gonna get some Chewbacca family and stuff like that. And
make sure you drink copiously.
Copiously.
Yes, it's the only way to make sense.
What doesn't it have?
Of how much coke the Carrie Fisher is on while she filmed that.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
So
see,
much.
That's some things that I did find fascinating is that, you know, she was nervous the whole time that she was going to be replaced by Jodie Foster. She's like quoted in saying. So these are things that are now in my head, people.
So the fun part about Empire is that when they're coming down the ramp to Baspin and like Carrie and Harrison are kind of joking and laughing, it's because they stayed up all night doing Blow with the Rolling Stones.
Oh, when they have the little face masks on when they're
when they're coming into Batspin, like Cloud City.
Oh, okay.
Like when they're just meeting Lando and they're like, and you're like, you've been on a ship for like a long time. Why are you laughing?
Let's see.
Space Coke.
So into that situation there with like Lando. So we'll talk about these character kind of things. I understand like who like Lando is because of culturally, you know, that this was, you know, and like there was a big deal when Danny, what was his name?
Donald Glover
was going to play him like later on. And then so now watching it as a, you know, with fresh eyes and like when he first sells them out, you know, for when they're there, I was in complete shock. I was like, he's a heel? He's a bad guy? I had a moment there. So this is like, I'm telling you, it was like my first time watching. So it was fun. It was
yeah.
cool.
Well, like, he's trying to protect his people. Like, Han is an old drinking buddy, and he's trying to not, like, sell out these people he's kind of in charge of. But then he's like, fuck it, the Empire's not going to stop. I might as well join, you know, fuck it up and join the rebellion. Like, which is kind of like, I get it, but at the same time, like, don't trust the fucking intergalactic empire. What are you doing?
Well, they do that again in like the 8th or 9th movie where somebody's
They do everything again in
the original trilogy.
So
and he gets multiple moments of redemption, and you know, I mean, it's otherwise there's no story if he doesn't sell them out and then like see the light. You know what I mean?
True. And so, and then we get more of him in the whole Solo movie, which that's the movie.
Underrated movie, not that.
I saw the second time and I really liked it even more the second time. I love Donald Glover, and the guy playing Solo like had a lot of mannerisms. You know, it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I wanted more of that, and like this is we can talk about that later. But like that whole relationship he has with his robot, and then his robot
the master-slave relationship.
Yeah, and so knowing that, and then I rewatched like New Hope and everything. It's like Millennium Falcon. It's like, oh, that's somebody's bitch on as a hood ornament. Like that's
not good. It's not good.
So that's like
remember she was all about freedom, and now she's trapped forever in the Millennium Falcon, who he gave away to Han. Oh my!
It worked. Like she's seeing the world.
Yeah, she's gonna live forever in the body of a robot. Aren't we all aspiring to do that?
She loves navigating through space. She gets to do it all.
She gets to be abandoned on Jakku
for
20 years.
It's like these movies are so crazy. They're epic. You know what I mean? And so I think that's why I like them. It's a serial that you kind of get to unravel these characters and everything, and it's so funny. There are kids' movies that we're talking about them as adults that they actually, you know, there's all these.
I don't think that they were built for kids because Flash Gordon really wasn't built for kids, you know, like back in the day. It was just sci-fi was like, was marketed, the toys were marketed towards kids. But I mean, Han Solo's like, see you in hell, like as his like, peace out, Girl Scout, like sort of moment. And, you know, like they were built for like an older audience.
Han Solo has some of the best goodbyes, like when he's just like done with something, like he just leaves. Okay. Like she says, "I love you," and he goes, "I know," and he's like,
which was like an ad lib too. So
I know you love me, bitch. Bye.
Now
the reason why he says "I know" is because the whole time he chases after her character, so she already knows that he loves her, like. That's not even a question in her mind, but he doesn't know that she even fucking likes him. So her saying "I love you" is a big deal, whereas him, she just needed him to know it. So I know.
Funny, like yeah. And then the first thing she says when she first sees him is "I love you." So
yeah.
So they keep bringing things like the full circle. So okay, now I have a weird like plot hole here that I want to address. So we have like, well, it's like loose talk here because you know we're like as we like wind down. This has been fun. Thank you guys so much for like joining me on here today. So something different to do that's just different. So what are the things that oh my god, now I'm just kind of like rethinking on myself as I'm like thinking. With this whole Disney thing with George Lucas about. He was saying that he would tell people that he was making a Disney movie, not a kids movie, because Family Robinson had a little bit of clout at the time, and everybody didn't take it seriously because they thought it was a children's movie. So
what was the other one that they made? Black Hole.
Oh, Disney, made the Black Hole.
Disney had Black Hole, but didn't Black Hole come out after Star Wars?
Yeah.
But like at the time, Disney was making like all of these weird interdimensional witch movies too, so it kind of makes sense. Like they did
Watcher in the Woods
and shit. Yeah, like
and they had Tron, you know.
Voice over here.
Sure.
My phone a friend is behind this curtain. But yeah, so that makes sense that you know that like Bedknobs and Broomsticks came out where like a witch is fighting Nazis. So I mean like. A lot of entertainment was like multifaceted. Like, yes, it's meant you can take a kid to it, but also there's a lot for adults.
Yeah, and this was a game. This was a game changer. I mean, it was incredible. Yeah. It was a fantasy that just kind of took over the imagination and just kind of went there. And you see the charm of it now. Like so,
Yeah, I think it was a game changer in a lot of ways too. Like not just merchandising or establishing a summer blockbuster, but also I think it just tapped into whatever that bit of canon and whatever that continuity was that everybody kind of enjoys to an extent. It's why your mom watches General Hospital. It's what the Marvel movies have been tapping into now for years and being incredibly successful for. Like I grew up loving anything with continuity. I'd watch A Nightmare on Elm Street over all those sequels because I wanted the last movie to count towards the next movie, and that's kind of why I love Marvel movies now. It's like an understated quality, and I think Star Wars really started that with like, oh, the same characters you loved, they're back, and they're doing this now.
And it's like
I think Star Wars is escapism at its finest, and the fact that people have grown up with it and then had their own families and shared it with their family members and so on and so forth. I mean, it's really something that you can share,
Well, I don't even think Star Wars started it. I think it just revived something that's been around for a while. Because, like, if you look at The Lord of the Rings, it's very similar. Yeah, it's a very similar kind of plot line that it follows. And then, then you go to Harry Potter, and it's a very similar plot line that it follows. Like, how much can you compare Obi-Wan Kenobi to Gandalf? You know what I'm saying? So,
but those were books back then. Star Wars is a movie.
Right. Right. So I think it just it's something that's like cyclical and revives something in a generation. And that's what this did for that generation is doing again now.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody who was kind of alive at the time, they're really, like we were saying earlier, there wasn't really anything like it. I mean, there were a few swings at science fiction, but this was like the space opera, Kurosawa-inspired space western kind of thing. This was like crazy. It was just knocked you over like a ton of bricks.
It also strikes a chord with being a hero's journey on top of pairing that with like a found family aspect that is a part of a lot of hero's journey, which like I feel like everybody wants to find their tribe sort of thing. So kind of falling into this like rebellion like is really like it kind of gets at people. You know what I mean? Like, oh, these people have my same beliefs and they're gonna have my back. So I think that's like it strikes a chord with a lot of people. Like band of misfits coming together, like because not everybody always feels like a part of something all the time. Like you don't feel a little bit off or like a broken little cookie cutter puzzle piece sort of thing. So I think that's a huge part of why that that speaks to a lot of people.
Yeah,
people to camp out on the sidewalks for the prequels.
Totally.
Did anybody here do that? Did you guys camp out?
The longest I ever waited was 9 hours to see the first re-released Star Wars movie with the additional footage.
Right.
Wow. What did you feel about that when you first saw it? When you saw it re-released?
Yeah.
So the thing is with the added footage, when it's sort of subtle and in the background, it's great. But when it's forced, like the whole, like changing the scene with Han and having him not shoot first anymore, where it kind of alters his character. The forced Jabba the Hutt Han Solo scene in front of the Falcon, you know, in the first movie is really awkward and clunky. But then like adding more to the background of Cloud City or, you know, things like that makes sense. But like a lot of, you know, again, that's the weird thing about coming up with it and having it be so much of who you are. I mean, like when it was on television the first time, that was a huge event. It was like we hadn't been able to see it since it was in the theater. When they put it out on VHS, that was a huge event. Oh my God, I can watch Star Wars whenever I want. Yeah, and we did. At one point, we could watch Star Wars and say every line of the movie along with it as we watched it. I mean, it's just, you know, that's how it was. But yeah, the digital stuff, like if I had a choice, I would far prefer to watch the originals. But you know, I look the other way when Jabba comes out as a CGI character. I'm just kind of like. It
just kind of speaks to who George Lucas is, right? Because I mean, he had this vision of something that was ahead of its time, even for what he put out. Like, and so he wanted to have all these things, and he couldn't realize them.
But he benefits best from good editing, and to me, like the prequels suffer the most because somebody wasn't near him who could tell him that some of what he was doing wasn't making sense, and that the dialogue was clunky and his directing was wooden, and like he needed someone to be like, hey girl, hey, let me tell you something, okay?
That's also in that special that Disney has on there that you can watch right now. That is, he was a director who wasn't an actor's director, that he just thought that you should do it. It's on the page. Just do what's on the page. Just do it. And his only directions were ever faster and more intense. Like he never really did any.
Really what directing is to work with the actors. It's not really.
And I think maybe that's where it is, where the second movie is where it clicks in for me. And so, because so many people, the second movie is everybody's favorite movie. Everybody's favorite movie is Empire. It's that thing. But the characters are flush. They're more full and they're more, you know, nuanced. There's a lot of stupid humor in these too, like jokey stuff that was that for kids. It's very slapsticky, you know, that kind of thing. So
I guess he was just nervous about losing control. It should, like in hindsight, it probably should have been something he should have always resourced out to a artistic director to do. But I think he just wanted to make sure he had control over the prequels, especially because he had the story in his head for so long.
Yeah. So I have like little bits of like trivia that I kind of like found like over here, like on the internet and things. And so one of them is that Vader in the first movie is only in A New Hope for 12 minutes of the entire movie. Yeah. 2.5 hours. He's only in 12 minutes of the whole entire movie. That's how like impactful that was. And also that
if you playing Darth Vader, he didn't know that he wasn't going to be the voice.
Yes, I saw that.
How awful is that you like played this character and then they gave you a new voice? Same thing happened to Audrey Hepburn.
Well, that's why everybody thinks,
Mom, I got this great role. I'm going to be, you know.
Mom!
But not only that, but the thing is,
they're like, that is a black man.
He learned all the lines. And like, it had to try to, and did these performances in this huge costume that was way too heavy and everything. Another part of it too is that James Earl Jones originally didn't take a credit for the first and second movie.
Right.
But like,
I didn't know that.
Epic man who like made this movie what it was, you know, because any other voice, this might not have worked.
He's done the Bible on tape because everybody's like, well, if it's gonna be God, might as well be James Earl Jones.
It's James Earl Jones.
Morgan Freeman.
It's Morgan Freeman or James Earl Jones. Soon Beyonce will be playing God when she hits that age. You know, she's going to age out of this and she's going to just start playing the voice of God. I'm telling you.
Right.
Now, if they did a version where Beyonce did the voice of Darth Vader, I'd tune in for that too, because that'd be neat.
What is she doing? We're parents. Why is she not recording this for us right now?
Hey, Dangilo, now, trivia-wise, did anybody tell you in Star Wars when R2-D2 and C-3PO are kind of holed up in that little control center? and the stormtroopers come in over in the blast doors there, that if you look to the right, the stormtrooper bumps his head on the blast door. You gotta go back and watch that.
Which movie?
In Star Wars, the original Star Wars.
New Hope.
And New Hope.
Because
Okay.
he literally goes like like that. And I've probably seen the movie 150 times and never noticed that. And then someone pointed it out, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And they left.
With all the tinkering George does, he never clipped that out. That's surprising.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if the Disney version is going to have the head bump. Now that I think about it,
every version that comes out, he changes something.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a new Disney version? I didn't know.
Well, the Disney Plus version is the extra, scenes and all that stuff.
Some of it's remastered though, because I know that there was an extra version of like when Obi-Wan's ghost comes back, and it was Ewan McGregor, and they've put it back to being what's his name,
Alex Guinness.
Alex Guinness.
Yeah, they put that back to see really
That was
complain.
such a mistake.
Was it Ewan McGregor ever?
It
They
was,
are.
yeah. They
Like Ewan McGregor, and like instead of making it like old like Darth Vader, they made it like the Hansen Christian guy.
Yeah.
Well,
Real awkward.
Oh, we'll talk about that later, because they did hate him dirty when he wanted to wear that suit. They made it way too big for him, and they put the helmet on top of his head with the shoulder blades or whatever. Like, I just like this whole thing about
He
it.
did a lot of things dirty in the prequels.
Yeah. That's a whole other podcast.
I also found that Princess Leia is the only person who is ever stunned with a blaster in the whole entire saga. That the very first movie is when she gets stunned, but nobody ever sets their blaster to stun ever again.
She's also the only person that murders somebody with her bare hands.
Who?
Leia. She's the only person that murders somebody with her bare hands.
Yeah. Oh my God.
He had it coming.
He
There
did.
is-
Oh, absolutely.
For as much death as this has, there's not very much gore or blood, which is great because it's a kids movie, you know. But they do kill the fuck out of everybody, like Yoda. Like, we're gonna blow up a whole entire planet. Let's just do this.
Well, they did Boba Fett wrong too. They threw him in the Sarlacc pit. I mean, that was
Okay.
that was not cool.
Why is Boba Fett such a big deal? Why is he such a big deal?
Because he had a rocket on his back,
Yeah.
and when you had the action figure, you were like, "This guy can fly." That's rad.
They
He looked
also
cool.
hyped him up in the extended universe like a lot, because people were like, Boba Fett, that's my fucking jam. So they're like, well, here's this Boba Fett series, and so it became wildly popular in the extended universe. I feel like that's like my catchphrase.
But is Boba Fett a Mandalorian?
Wait, what?
Is he a Mandalorian?
A Mandalorian is technically a planet that was taken over by the Sith, so they helped the Sith. And then the Mandalorian is he is a Mandalorian, but apparently they're all bounty hunters for reasons. TM.
D'Angelo. So when I was a kid, I liked Boba Fett because he was one of the first action figures I ever owned.
Mm-hmm.
And then, there's no internet back then. There's no one to tell you that they like Boba Fett too. It's like later on when you're in college and you're like getting high and sitting with your friends or whatever, and you're like, fucking Boba Fett was rad. And then everybody in the room goes, yeah, he was rad. And then it's like a thing. And now it's like, well, whatever. Everybody likes Boba Fett. But it's like at the time you were like, fuck yeah, everybody does like Boba Fett.
No.
What are your favorite secondary, third tier, like what are those characters? What are your favorites on those? Like, who do you guys like? Random robot moments, random droids, random aliens. Like who sticks out? Like,
I was mostly just a movie guy. I didn't get into the comics, so like Boba Fett didn't have a lot of the movies, so I didn't get too attached to him. But yeah,
Like Admiral Akbar, is that what we're looking for?
yeah, I'm just wondering because there's like all these like the little cutie kind of things that that cute little aliens and all that kind of thing. And I think some of that comes like later with like the porgs and all that kind of crap. But like it's funny because some people they love like, oh, I love this one little alien, the one that gets, or the droid that screams with his feet done, that kind of thing. Like,
in the original three, there weren't too many, right? I guess you had the bounty hunters, which is cool, but
Yeah, they had the guy with the thing around his ears. You know, the bald dude with the
Oh yeah,
earmuffs.
yeah. Okay, yeah.
So yeah,
Hey.
Jabba's palace.
so there's these things.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Jabba Palace dancers. She got a raw deal.
Yeah, Gamorrean guards. You know.
5 minutes, and he's like, "I think you need to be fed to something now."
I always liked the guy that was really sad when the Rancor died.
Yeah.
See, that's another one of these like really random humor things that he's just
He's
like.
like a PETA guy. He's just like,
I raised him.
He was like, "That's my buddy."
It was his friend. Like it was just so many weird like little things like that you know are in this like universe. I'm trying to find if I have any other like little facty kind of things here. But wrapping this up, looking at what these movies make, it's insane. So I did pull like box office numbers just because I wanted to kind of just see. So they spent $11 million on the first movie, and it has since made $775 million. The episode 5 was 23 mil that they spent on that one, and that's made $547 million. And episode 6 is at $32.5 million. So they did keep spending more and more money. So they kept throwing more money at him.
Fun fact about the first Star Wars movie is that Debbie Reynolds didn't want her daughter not flying first class when she was a leading lady. And her mom was on the phone like, "George, you're going to give my daughter a first class flight." And he's like, "We don't have the budget for it. I'm really sorry." And she, like, Carrie had to wrestle the phone away from her mom and be like, "It's fine, Mom. I'm just going to do it. I want to do Star Wars. I'm flying to England. It's fine. No, it's fine." Right there.
Incredible. Well, like, that's even, what's his name? Harrison Ford, they didn't want to use him at first because he wasn't unknown because of American Graffiti, which was the whole reason why George Lucas got this movie. Was American Graffiti did so well the year that this was actually in production. So that's why they gave him more money, because he was only slated for $9 million. So they gave him another $2 million here. But then he financed a lot of the other movies himself. And so it's kind of insane.
With all that merchandising money.
Oh my God.
As Mel Brooks' Yoda will say in Spaceballs, merchandising.
Real.
Spaceballs the flamethrower.
Well, Alec Guinness made out because the one who played Obi-Wan Kenobi, because he took a lower pay cut in order to get royalties from George Lucas.
Didn't Peter Cushing do the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
All the major faces, like, pretty much, if you see them in Hammer films, they got a percentage of Star Wars. So they live their life. They're like, "We're fine now. We don't have to work."
Well, yeah. And the thing is, it's like Mark Hamill had issues getting more work, you know, after this, I think, because he was so synonymous with being Luke Skywalker.
Well, also, his face got fucked up in a boating accident. You can see it, like, right in Empire.
Yeah.
He thought he wasn't going to be able to play Luke Skywalker, and they're like, "No, bitch, you're going to be able to play Luke Skywalker. Trust me. Here, you were attacked by something."
Yeah. Well, right, this monster in the scene.
Oh, so that's why they wrote that into the very first scene of the damn movie.
Yeah.
To explain.
Yeah, that's why his face is more smooshed in the, you know, after the first one.
Now I'm gonna notice this.
Handsome as all get out.
Because they had to take like cartilage out of his ear to fix his nose or something, and I don't know, something like that.
Oh my God, these things. See, these are things I don't know. I love this. I'm getting like these like little details. So it's
Do you want
so
to hear
good.
about the fan fiction wars?
The what?
The fan fiction wars?
Oh no, I don't think I can go there.
He's like, nope.
This confuses me so much as it is that like I don't know if I can go into the whole fan fiction or extended universe.
Got married
Like
as Luke and Leia.
What?
Somebody got married as Luke and Leia.
No.
Yep, they got married as Luke and Leia in between Empire and they got married as Luke and Leia in between Empire and Return.
Uh-huh.
And they would come into a back in the day, they used to have magazines where you'd go in and you'd pick up your fan fiction.
Uh-huh.
There was these people that would come into this Escondido bookstore, and they would pick up their magazines, but they would talk shit because they were different shippers. Like they were Luke and Leia shippers versus Han Solo and Han Solo and Leia shippers. So these two girls were talking shit to this couple, and then like return drops, and they go in on Tuesday to pick up their magazines, and they fight, and they have to get broken up by police. Escondido bookstore tea.
Oh my goodness. we need to find those police reports. I would like to see.
Oh, and then they broke up, and then he ended up marrying another girl that used to come in to buy slash fiction for Luke and Han. So do what you want with that.
So this gentleman has probably killed people before. Wow. Like,
he's like, whose skin are you wearing now?
Oh, so intimidating. That's the thing, though. This fan culture, I did read that there is Jedi Church. Like, there's people who actually do see, like, the whole religion and all that kind of thing. So, insanity. I'm going to wrap this up. We went for a little bit over an hour. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this Binge Bitches Talking Star Wars. I want to go ahead and plan another one of these in the future, so I'll talk to you guys so, like, we can talk about the first 3 films. I want to talk about prequels. I want to talk about extended, or the, what's called, the newer films, and maybe even get into some Mandalorian, because I guess Mandalorian happens later than all of this.
It happens after the fall of the Empire and in between the newer movies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Show Baby
You're better
Yoda.
off looking it up online.
So she has a Baby Yoda. And
Show Baby Yoda. Show Baby. Yay!
Yeah.
Aw.
The one thing we can all come together with is that cute.
it is really, really cute. And so, and we'll get into that whole discussion of like
a
what
90-year-old man.
Yeah, was he hatched? Is he a baby of somebody? Where did he come from? So we'll talk about that part later. Thank you guys so much. I want to just kind of go around. Tom, if you guys want to give your, I'll start with Tom, go to Annie, go to Brian, and then Lily. I'm going to make sure I want you guys to just kind of go around, give your Instagram handles, and also what shows you guys are on if you guys do have a podcast and where people can find those. And so,
I'm fine.
Okay. Tom has an Instagram. You can find it through mine. And then so Annie.
So I have a couple handles. So my you can check me out. My personal one is at AM Setting, but my Disney account is at WDW Collective. And I am the co-host of the Never Growing Up podcast, which is a Disney Parks podcast for adults. So it's basically us just getting drunk at the Disney parks, whether it's Disney World or Disneyland. And it's really for people who go to the parks without kids, because I don't have kids and people who listen don't have kids.
It's fun. I actually found it on Stitcher this past weekend, so I was listening to
nice.
Here and there, and it's so cute, and your co-host is fun, and like so. It's a good time, and they actually give you some like vital information, like you can take a nap over here when you're a little bit tired. Like she has those kind of things that I think are neat. And so, Brian, where can we find you?
Yeah, when there isn't a global pandemic, you can find me bartending at Peck's Bar in San Diego. I also I did a podcast for a long time called 619 Bearcast. We took 6 years off, and we just started recording about 3 weeks ago. New episodes, since we can do it on Zoom. And if you want to find me on Instagram, my handle on there is Hasbro Physicist.
Nice. And then Lily, where can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, all by Lily Holiday.
Perfect. So thanks you guys so much for joining me on here today. My sun has been changing and it keeps moving around this fucking room and I don't know what's going on here. So I'm going to go to a black room next time with just a little ring light. But thank you guys so much for joining me on Binge Bitches today. We talk Star Wars. This will end up over on YouTube and I will give you guys links for that. But you guys can find it on my Facebook page. And thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys later.
Cool.
Love it.